Alien princess misbehaves, so the human protector delivers a lesson in discipline. Captain John Rader stepped into Nexus Station on a cold, uneventful morning. Just another regular day for a 32-year-old security officer. But for him, Nexus Station was not just an interstellar hub. It was a meeting point for dozens of alien species, a place where civilizations collided and clashed. Known for his crisis management skills, John had been stationed here for 8 years, and never before had he faced such a daunting challenge. As a stoic, serious individual who always kept calm in any situation, John had dealt with his share of tense moments. But when he was given the task of overseeing a special guest, Lady Elysia Talnora, the daughter of the powerful Verdant leader Talnora, he immediately sensed that something was amiss. Elysia was not just a prominent name in the political circles of the galaxy. She was a force to be reckoned with, difficult to control, and John knew at once that this mission would not be a simple one. When he entered his quarters at Nexus Station, John couldn't help but feel the stark contrast between this room and the usual security quarters. This was not a safe place. It was one of power and secrets that he had yet to fully understand. And then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Elysia stood before him, an embodiment of pride and power. With radiant green skin and sharp silver eyes, she shone like a star in the cosmos, cold yet mesmerizing. She wore a tight black outfit, irresistibly beautiful but equally aloof, as though she didn't belong here, but rather in another higher, more powerful world. At 25, Elysia was not just the daughter of Talnora, a leader in the Verdant, but an independent individual who could not be easily controlled. Her silver hair flowed lightly in the air, and when her eyes met John's, he realized one thing. She was not someone who could be subdued easily. "So, you'll be watching over me?" Elysia asked, her voice gentle yet filled with challenge, as if she were testing his limits. She stepped closer, her gaze not hiding the curiosity mixed with provocation. "Do you think I'll easily obey your orders?" John, despite having prepared for this, couldn't help but feel a slight surprise. Unlike the guests he had dealt with before, Elysia was not just a political tool or a diplomatic subject. She was a person with a strong, challenging personality. She showed no signs of fear or hesitation when facing a security officer of Nexus Station. However, John did not let himself lose control. He was too familiar with tense situations. "I'm here to protect you and ensure the stability of this station," he said, his voice calm but firm, as though emphasizing that his mission could not be compromised. Elysia smiled, a gentle yet loaded smile. "Perhaps you'll find this task more difficult than you think, John," she said casually, her eyes still locked on him, as though analyzing every small gesture he made. John didn't respond, but inside, a sense of unease began to rise. He knew that this encounter, though just beginning, would not be as simple as he had imagined. And as Elysia continued to challenge him with her gaze, he realized one thing. This was only the beginning of a game whose rules he didn't fully understand. For a security officer like John Rader, overseeing someone was never an easy task. But when he was assigned to protect Lady Elysia Talnora, he soon realized that he wasn't just facing an important political figure. He was dealing with a challenging individual. And it didn't take long for Elysia to start making his job even more difficult. On the first day, around 10 a.m., John had a sense that something was off as he attended a diplomatic reception, a major event at Nexus Station where representatives from various alien species gathered. Everyone was dressed in elaborate costumes, offering polite smiles, but all eyes were drawn to one person, Elysia. She didn't need to do anything special, just standing there with an alluring, powerful, and proud presence. Her silver hair gleamed under the lights, and her cold, sharp silver eyes were like a blade. But not everyone appreciated her beauty and charm, especially when it was coupled with a personality that was unpredictable. As the reception continued, all eyes remained on her. Elysia, as though stepping into the spotlight with absolute confidence, leaned back on an elegant cushioned chair, chin held high in defiance. That's when she decided to play a prank, perhaps a small challenge for those around her. In an instant, everything changed. Elysia accidentally knocked over a bottle of precious wine, spilling its bright red liquid across the floor like a spreading stain, causing panic among the diplomats. Everyone immediately stopped, grimacing as they looked at the expensive wine, an item the entire station had spent a great deal of money to procure. Nearby diplomats began whispering, some hurriedly bowing their heads, casting nervous glances at John, who was observing from afar. John, accustomed to handling tense situations, immediately stepped in. He moved quickly, but not to shout or criticize. He was there to manage the situation before things got out of hand. He gently raised his hand, as if signaling to stop everything. "Lady Elysia," he said softly, though his tone revealed his seriousness, "we need to be more careful in situations like this." However, Elysia simply smiled gently, her gaze full of challenge. "Oh, I was just having a little fun. What's the harm?" she said with a playful laugh, making the atmosphere even more tense. It wasn't just a harmless joke, it was a direct challenge to John. Her response not only surprised the diplomats, but also made John feel provoked. Elysia was not worried. In fact, she seemed to enjoy the tension she had just created. This was how she tested the limits of those around her, even John, who was trying to keep calm in every situation. John couldn't help but sigh, clearly feeling that his job was not just about protecting safety, but also managing challenging individuals like Elysia. He had thought the task would be easier, but now everything had changed. And that was only the beginning. 2 days after the incident with the spilled wine, Elysia once again found a way to challenge John's patience. She was not someone who could easily be tied down, and Nexus Station was certainly not a place where she could follow every rule strictly, especially when she felt too closely watched. So, on a quiet morning, when everyone was attending a long diplomatic meeting, Elysia decided to disappear. She had planned it meticulously, taking advantage of the attention being focused on the important discussions. She quietly left the hall and walked down the quiet corridors of the station without drawing any attention. It was a perfect escape, or at least she thought so. With her agility, Elysia needed only a few minutes to vanish from everyone's sight, especially John, who always had sharp and keen eyes. However, she had not anticipated John's lightning-fast reflexes. He was not someone easily fooled. Although he hadn't seen her for a short while, he immediately felt that something was wrong. And as he walked down the long corridors, his eyes instantly locked on Elysia as she stepped into the library. "Where do you think you're sneaking off to?" John's voice rang out coldly, laced with sarcasm. He stood leaning against the door, his eyes betraying his annoyance, but maintaining his usual calm demeanor. Elysia turned around, unashamed, even smiling slightly. "I was just looking for a good book. Do I need to ask permission?" she replied, not even attempting to hide the amusement at his reaction. Her words, though provocative, unexpectedly lightened the tension in the library. John couldn't help but chuckle. Despite the frustration and exhaustion of chasing after her, he couldn't deny that the way Elysia viewed things was truly interesting and surprising. They stood there for a moment, neither saying anything, with only soft laughter echoing between them. However, beneath that laughter, tension still simmered. Elysia was not someone who wanted to be bound by rules, and she had no intention of acknowledging John's control. "You don't think I'll just stand by and let you do whatever you want, do you?" John said, trying to keep his tone serious, though conflicted feelings stirred within him. Elysia looked at him, her gaze full of challenge, but not without a hint of sweetness. "Oh, I just wanted to see what you'd do." She smiled, as though waiting for a strong reaction from John. This brief exchange might have seemed insignificant to others, but for John, it was a clear sign that their relationship would not be as simple as he had thought. Despite her sweet appearance, Elysia was clearly a challenging person, and every decision she made was not going to be straightforward. After the jokes and challenges that Elysia continuously posed to John, he began to realize that a stronger measure was needed to make her understand that her actions could not go on without consequences. It wasn't a physical punishment, but a psychological one, subtle yet impactful. John decided to completely ignore her and stop responding to her actions. One day, after Elysia had once again challenged him, John realized that there was no need to argue or get angry to teach her a lesson. Instead, he began to completely ignore her, not responding to her provocations, the challenging glances, or even the arrogant pranks she continuously threw his way. Every time she tried to escape from his supervision, he did not chase after her or respond, simply continuing his work in a nonchalant and detached manner. Elysia, used to being the center of attention, especially from John, who she saw as her equal, began to realize that when there was no reaction from him, her actions no longer gave her the satisfaction of victory or amusement. John not only stopped reacting to Elysia's jokes, but he also didn't respond when she deliberately disrupted their work. For instance, when she ignored his instructions during an important task, instead of reprimanding her or asking her to redo it, he simply remained silent and continued with his work, not even mentioning her mistakes. This silence didn't just surprise Elysia. It made her feel abandoned. No scolding, no anger, only a chilling indifference and unsettling silence. It made her feel like she was no longer the center of attention, no longer the one who could manipulate situations. She, someone who had always been used to challenging and controlling everything around her, now had to face a John who would not be swayed by her games or challenges. This punishment made Elysia feel more uncomfortable and dissatisfied than ever. She tried to create situations to provoke him, but John just continued to ignore her, never once responding. Every time Elysia tried to draw attention to herself, she failed. The lack of response from John made her feel like she was failing. She began to realize that her pranks didn't just annoy him, but they were also hindering her ability to complete important tasks. Each time she tried to control the situation in her way, she found that John was completely unaffected, and that only made her feel like she couldn't control anything anymore. As the days went by, Elysia began to question whether she truly understood herself. She realized that her actions not only irritated John, but they also created unnecessary tension between them. This punishment, although not physically harmful, was emotionally painful. John had cleverly taught her a lesson about respect and boundaries without saying a single word. This silence was a reminder that she couldn't always control everything in the way she wanted. Gradually, Elysia realized that she needed to learn how to follow the rules, not just in her work, but in her relationships. She understood that she couldn't always get people to do what she wanted, and that mutual respect was the most important thing in any relationship, whether professional or personal. John was not just a security officer carrying out his duty. He was the one who helped her realize that pride and challenges could sometimes hinder the development of truly deep relationships. In the end, Elysia not only learned a lesson in discipline and responsibility, but also in respecting others. And throughout this process, she not only changed, but also gained a deeper understanding of John. The person who she never expected would help her see herself in a new light. 3 days passed, and the tension between John and Elysia remained unabated. Every time she challenged him, he responded with patience and calm. But no one could have predicted that the real danger would come from an unforeseen factor: an alien attack. Around 5 p.m., as the space sky outside Nexus Station began to darken, a group of alien mercenaries suddenly attacked. The station's security alarms blared loudly, and chaos erupted immediately. John and Elysia, who were at a remote part of the station, didn't have time to run to the safe zones. They were trapped in a dark corridor with the exits blocked by heavily armed mercenaries. The sounds of gunfire and plasma bolts tearing through the air echoed around them, each shot heightening the tension. John quickly drew his gun, his calmness now an instinct. There was no time to worry about Elysia's discomfort. "We need to get out of here. Follow me, and don't make me repeat myself." His voice was decisive, but the underlying tension was undeniable. Elysia, as if caught up in the atmosphere of battle, didn't just stand there passively. She gripped her weapon tightly, her sharp eyes betraying no fear. Elysia transformed entirely, becoming a true soldier. She moved with incredible agility, dodging laser shots and firing back accurately at the enemies. "I'll protect you. Don't move," John said, partly to keep her safe, partly to maintain control of the situation. But Elysia didn't respond with her usual sarcastic smile. Instead, she gave him a confident grin, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Then I'll protect you," she replied, her voice not without a challenge. The two of them began to advance, but they weren't running away. They were fighting side by side, facing the enemies and the new challenges ahead. A series of plasma bolts shot overhead, and with just one mistake, they could be instantly obliterated. But Elysia, no longer the proud princess, was now a warrior. She moved at an astonishing speed, making John realize that she was no weakling. She shot each round precisely, forcing the enemies to fall back. Then suddenly a mercenary from the left attacked. John couldn't react in time, but Elysia quickly leapt forward, landing a powerful kick that knocked the mercenary down. A barrage of plasma fire shot past, but neither was hit. Elysia and John continued fighting, but in John's heart, a strange feeling began to rise. He realized that this woman, who appeared weak and haughty, could truly be an exceptional teammate. Things grew more intense when a grenade exploded nearby. A violent shockwave threw both of them to the ground, dust and debris scattering everywhere. John managed to stand, but Elysia quickly pulled him down behind a stone pillar. "Please don't tell me I'm the only one who can save myself in this situation." Elysia chuckled coldly, once again showing no fear. John looked at her, saying nothing, but a faint smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. The two had worked together as true warriors, making quick and precise decisions, and now there was no room for compromise or hesitation. They had only one path forward: defeat the enemies before they were surrounded. Suddenly, a hatch door opened, revealing their only exit, but also leading into a deadly trap. The mercenary leader stepped out of the shadows, a haunting smile on his face. "I knew you wouldn't give up so easily, but you might die here," he said. John and Elysia exchanged a glance, then stepped forward into the path. No more words, just determined looks. Everything had gotten beyond their control, but they could not stop. They would fight to the end. As the battle with the mercenaries grew fiercer, everything suddenly took an unexpected turn that neither John nor Elysia had anticipated. Despite their relentless fighting and seamless coordination, Elysia couldn't avoid being injured while dodging a sudden attack. A plasma shot grazed her shoulder, leaving a deep wound, and she fell to the ground. John, who had always maintained a calm exterior and never allowed emotions to cloud his judgment, immediately recognized the situation. He rushed to her, and for the first time during this battle, concern was evident in his eyes. Elysia, though still holding back her vulnerability, could feel the shift in John's demeanor. She looked at him, her smile pale but still proud. "Are you okay?" John asked, his voice deep and filled with genuine concern. The question seemed to be both an expression of worry and an acknowledgement that he couldn't continue without making sure she was safe. Elysia tried to sit up, but the pain from her shoulder made her sway slightly. Still, she refused to allow herself to seem weak. "I'm fine, but perhaps I'll need someone like you to protect me." The words weren't just a thank you. They were an acknowledgement of their changing dynamic. John, though always maintaining a serious and disciplined attitude, now couldn't deny that Elysia had completely changed his perception of her. No longer just a proud princess, but a strong warrior who, at times, needed protection. That moment passed quickly, but left a lasting impression. As John helped Elysia to her feet, he was no longer just her protector. He was now her companion. Suddenly, the tension between them seemed to vanish. The distance between them was no longer filled with cold words or strict supervision. From the concern in his eyes to her smiling response, all of it created a turning point in their relationship. This wasn't just a moment of fighting together. It was the moment they both began to realize each other's worth, not only in battle, but in support, trust, and the vulnerable moments that each of them had. Elysia was no longer just a pawn in the cosmic political game, and John was no longer just a security officer protecting her out of duty. They had become companions, bound by a stronger connection, an understanding that needed no words. As the battle finally subsided, they looked at each other, no more need for words. Their gazes spoke everything, from the initial tension to now, they understood each other more than ever before. 5 days after the attack, as the chaos on Nexus Station subsided and things began to return to order, John and Elysia stood before their final challenge, a political contest that would change Elysia's life forever. This contest wasn't just a battle of wits between Elysia and those around her with power, but also an opportunity to determine who would have the right to marry her. The winner would not only need to defeat their opponent physically, but also win her heart. This was not a simple fight. It was a competition steeped in strategy and decision-making, where emotions, reputation, and power were tightly intertwined. Elysia knew that this was the moment she had to make the biggest decision of her life. A decision that could change not only her personal future, but the future of Verdant, her people. And in this battle, the only person she wanted standing beside her was John. Not because he was the only one who could protect her, but because he was the only one who had always seen her as a real person, not as a political tool or a valuable asset in negotiations. And as they stood face to face, their eyes exchanged emotions that didn't need words. "You will be the one to decide," John said, his voice deep and sincere. "I didn't enter this contest just for love, but because of the respect I have for you. You're the only one who has the right to decide your path, and I just want to be a part of that decision." John's words were like a silent vow, affirming that he would always be there, no matter the outcome. Not to possess her, but to be her companion, the one she could trust and rely on. Elysia stood silently, her eyes shining in the light of the ceremony. Everyone around them was watching intently, understanding that she was the one who would decide, and her actions today would affect the future of an entire civilization. She looked at John, her eyes filled with emotions she had been hiding for so long, and she could feel the sincerity in his words. She didn't need to search for a response. It was already clear. It wasn't this political contest that would decide who she belonged to, but rather her own choice. In her heart, John had become an irreplaceable part, not just the one who protected her in dangerous situations, but also the one person who respected her as an individual, not as a political tool. "I choose you," Elysia said, and though the words were simple, they carried with them a monumental decision. Not because of duty, not because of political pressure, but because she had found someone she could trust and love, someone who truly understood her. The two stood there, in complete silence, as if everything around them had stopped. This contest, though political and fiercely contested, had led to an outcome not based on strength or power, but on the respect and true love between two people from two different worlds. As the leaders in the council began to clap and the sounds of acceptance echoed through the space, Elysia and John knew that their journey had never been about a contest or victory, but about overcoming barriers to find someone with whom you could share your life.